First off, the first questions I wanted to ask were a few background, kind of setting the scene questions, which were, how old were you during the Great Depression?
Well, I was born in 1921, which was the Roaring Twenties, and that when I was born then, as I said, and when the Depression hit, I guess I was about 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old.
Where did you live at the time?
In the Bronx, New York.
And what kind of jobs did your parents have?
My father was a shoemaker.
Prior to the stock market crash, or as we know it, Black Tuesday, did you have any idea that there was anything wrong?
Too young to know, yes. Too young, much too young to know.
So, like, when you found out, was it a surprise that it kind of like, oh?
Well, it was only what I heard in those days. All we had was radio. We didn't have TV, and what I heard on the radio. I'd be watching a Lone Ranger, for instance, and the news would come on and say, the country's in bad shape.
Now, after it had hit, were you, being as young as you were you kind of unconcerned about it? Did you not think?
It didn't affect me at all. I went about my business. I got new clothes when I went to school for the beginning of the season, and a lot of kids like myself didn't even know what was happening, really. It had no effect on us.
As the Depression began to set in, what kind of things started to change for you?
Things sort of remained the same in our neighborhood. I'm sure that parents were laid off from their jobs, but I didn't see any of it. We were kids. Yeah, and as kids, it didn't affect us, really. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the news of job loss, did you know anyone?
Yes, I had several uncles that were in building trades, and they were laid off. And my mother, we were fortunate enough to help them out with their rent and so forth.
What kind of stuff did you guys do?
Well, we helped them pay their rent, for one thing, and help them with the groceries, quite a bit.
You had mentioned that your father was a shoemaker and that you guys were better off. So, like, was there like a lot of work? Were you guys still able to hold jobs?
There was always work for a shoemaker. People couldn't afford to buy new shoes, so they had to get them repaired. And I'm sure my dad made the prices affordable so he can have business. But see, in my family, my brothers and sisters were working, and they kept working. My brother was in the budding radio business, and my sisters were in the garment industry and worked through the whole Depression.
So luckily you guys were still able to.
As I say, we were well off enough to help the rest of the family, uncles and aunts and cousins.
During the time, we learned that a lot of politicians were kind of giving talks to try and assure the country that things would get better. Do you remember any of those talks, or do you remember like what they were trying to tell you guys?
Well, the thing I remember, the best thing was Franklin D. Roosevelt coming on the air and saying, I guess you had heard the phrase, you have nothing to fear but fear itself. And he followed that up with the I guess there were monthly talks, the fireside chats they call them, and he spoke very humanly to the people that were in trouble. That's all I remember. I remember listening to the fireside chats. A very assuring gentleman was this FDR man.
So you think he did a good job at kind of assuring the people?
I thought he did an excellent job to keep the country together. And he had some programs to help people, young people in fact, that were looking for jobs. He had what he called a CCC, and what they did was go around the country and help with forestry and things with the environment. And it was good for the kids. It kept them out of trouble, for one thing. I imagine without it, stealing would have become rampant, really. Yeah. And they did a lot of constructive things. Then they had the Works Project Administration, which built roads. And I mean good roads. When I moved out to Comac, there was a road there that was built by the WPA that was still in very grand shape. And we had to cover it up with a 4-lane highway, of course, which I'm sure needs repairs right now.
To kind of like get away from things or just to have fun, what did like you and your friends do in your spare time, like to, just have fun?
We played games that didn't require any equipment. We had a game called Kick the Can. And what it did was, it was like baseball. You would kick this can and run around bases without a ball. And we also had a thing called Steal the Flag, and this we'd have sides, and again, no equipment, just a handkerchief, and stealing the flag meant stealing the flag.
As things started to progress, did you have any idea that things might get better?
It looked like we were on a road to recovery, and unfortunately, that's when the war broke out and everything changed. I joined the Air Corps, as you remember me telling you, and my brother along with me, and my 2 older brothers worked in defense factories.
Mm-hmm. Like, do you think that the war had anything to do with bringing the country out, though? Like,
definitely,
boosting the economy?
definitely. It became us. After the war, we became the leader of the world, actually. And prior to that, it was Great Britain, and they were the leader of the world. But now, still today, we lead economically and every which way, really.
Now, of course, seeing how things are going today with the stock market and how things are starting to tank every day, you hear bad news. Do things seem similar to how they were back then?
Yes, I think so. I don't think it's hit the average person yet. Unfortunately, I feel that the worst is yet to come because it hasn't hit the lower families yet. There's a lot of people that are being laid off from jobs, and we need a leader that's going to do an FDR job for us. Hopefully, Obama will do that.
I hope so. And with how things are going today, does it look like we're in a similar state to how we were back then? Like we're going down the same path?
No, I don't think so. I think with the experience we had from that depression, I think we will work our way out of it without people really suffering. I think we'll take care of the poorer people better than we did then.
I think you're more prepared.
I think so, absolutely. We're more prepared because of the experiences we had prior to this.
We've heard stories through our history class where a lot of people in New York especially, who either worked with the brokers themselves or were brokers, there was always the things you'd see people jumping out of buildings.
Yeah, that was absolutely, no, I didn't see that. I just read it in the papers, that's all. I was old enough to read papers then, so.
Was it a scary thing to kind of see that all this was going on in the paper?
It was sad. No, not scary, but sad. I mean, just like during 9/11 when you saw people jumping out windows,
Yeah,
for a different reason, but
kind of had the same,
it was the hopelessness of it,
If you could summarize the Great Depression in like a few words, like you just said hopelessness, I thought that was a good idea. If you could summarize it in like a few words that categorizes what it was to be in there.
I guess it was very exasperating for a man to be educated like these people down in Wall Street were very educated people. Most of them, I'm sure, went to Wharton. And here, the bottom just fell out on their lives. So I guess the only thing they saw to do was to jump out a window, unfortunately.
Well, thanks for talking with me today. I learned a lot, and
it's been my pleasure.
Grand Uncle Joe.
One which was the Roaring '20s. I'd be watching a Lone Ranger, for instance, and in the beginning of the season, and you have nothing to fear but fear itself. Bringing it back to the other side, to jump out a window.